Thank you everyone again for joining today's session. My name is Sophia and I'm a junior consultant at Turner & Townsend. Today we're joined by Jonathan, who's a principal consultant at Turner & Townsend. The purpose of the event, this is a retrofit information support and expertise event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy, Security and Net Zero, and it's delivered by Turner & Townsend.
Thank you very much, Sophia. I'm Jonathan, Principal Consultant at Turner & Townsend, and today's Masterclass is covering project mobilisation planning. It's quite a broad topic, so we're not going to go into massive depth into any one topic. It should be kind of a jumping off point to see if there's any gaps in your project mobilisation planning. And then if there's anything you would like to do a deeper dive on, there is likely a masterclass or some content on the RISE website. If you wanted to go, for instance, further into procurement or something else, there would be there for you. Agenda is we're going to go through initial planning, data, resident engagement, procurement and supply chain management, challenges, assurance and resources, further resources. Initial planning. So project requirements. I think first thing when you're looking at a project is to make sure that your internal requirements and external requirements match up. It's highly likely that most people on the call will be looking to work through either the Warm Homes Local Grant or Social Housing Fund, and there are requirements as part of that funding stream. So principally to improve properties to EPCC. In the past, we've also had additional requirements such as thermal efficiency requirements, 90 kilowatt hours per meter squared in terms of heat loss, which isn't included in the current one. Statutory requirements, so you'd be looking at the government's net zero targets. If we're looking at the private rented sector, possibly things like minimum energy efficiency standards. And then also regional ambitions. So although your particular region may have targets in excess of that, for instance, the net zero by 2050, for instance, Manchester, I think, has a target of net zero by 2038. So we need to make sure those external pressures match up with our internal requirements. So you may have your own strategies. Net zero targets again may be in excess of 2050, in which case you may wish to go further, faster than the funding would allow, and therefore you need to kind of make allowance for that. If you wanted to take properties to EPCB, you need to make sure that you're still meeting the requirements of the funding whilst meeting your own requirements. Reductions in fuel poverty, you may have additional targets, so you're going to target specific properties where you believe they've got additional fuel poverty issues. And again, timelines. Do the timelines associated with the funding streams match up with your own ones? If, for instance, you had set a target, all your properties need to be EPCC by 2035, 36, then you're going to need to move quicker than the funding allows. So it's just making sure that the funding does match up with your internal requirements. And also, again, budgets. You're not going to be able to deliver, I don't know, if you wanted to do 1,000 properties, and the budgets don't stretch to that, and again you're going to run into problems. And again, fit in with planned work. So again, if you have a big roofing replacement program in 3 years time, actually, and you've got a significant number of properties with solar PV planned to be done as part of this funding stream, you may wish to bring those forward in order to make those stack up, rather than having to take those solar panels off and replace them when the re-roofing works come along. So it's just about making sure that your internal pressures are matched up with the external funding streams, and it's not always evident straight away. Project team. So the next thing you'd want to do is, now we understand what project we're looking to do, is a skills audit of your current team. So a needs analysis. Do you have the internal capability to deliver? Is there going to be some requirement for external resources to be brought in, consultants or the like? Kind of example roles that you may wish to have, or skills within your project team would be a project manager. It's going to likely be quite a large and complex project to manage as your retrofit works, with multiple properties, multiple measures, across multiple years. Someone who is able to project manage that, make sure everyone is doing what they're doing when they're supposed to be doing it, is extremely useful. Project support officer or kind of resident liaison officer, are you going to have that in-house? Are you going to have that with a contractor? It may be that actually a bit of both is the best way forward. So you need to understand where the resident liaison function will sit, whose role is it to do what and when. Contract manager, again, if likely to have potentially complex contracts with KPIs and SLAs. However, if no one is overseeing those KPIs or SLAs, they may well not get done, and you may not get the value from the contract that you initially hoped you would. Finance officer, again, you will be spending a fair bit of money likely through the retrofit programs, and the finance people will need to be involved. So has that person been identified? Legal teams, you'll be having to signing numerous MOUs, grant funding agreements, and possibly additional legal requirements. For instance, if you're delivering local grant to a landlord and there is some costs there, have you work that out from your internal processes. That will need to be worked out likely with a legal team and or finance officer. Project surveyor, really crucial. Who is going to be the person on site that's going to be checking the work of the contractor, leaving it purely up to the contractor, specifically if you're doing work such high-risk works like internal wall insulation, external wall insulation, even high-risk works for the residents, so heating system changes. Really need to have someone on site making sure that the contractor is doing what they said they would do when they're going to do it, and checking the quality of that work. Again, they should be suitably qualified, have suitable understanding of the type of measures and works that they're doing. I know that a solar PV system needs to have a bi-directional RCD, but I certainly couldn't tell you if one's been fitted. So you need to have someone who kind of understands the type of measures you're fitting. Communication, it's likely to be numerous communication points, whether that's news stories about the funding or that's communication through to the residents. They'll need to work closely with your projects teams to get that communication out. Procurement, again, very important. Do you know what procurement route you're going to take? You need to have a procurement professional who understands the requirements of your organization and how best to procure the works. Again, health and safety as well, who is going to be pulling together the pre-contract information, any F10 requirements, compliance with CDM, who is going to be doing that role. And again, timeline for resource allocation. You might not necessarily need all that resource straight away. For instance, you may decide you need a couple of project surveyors, however you're not delivering works or a huge amount of works until September, October of this year, in which case you may look to recruit slightly later than if you were delivering works from April onwards. Data, we all love data. Investing in and managing your data not only aids in acquiring funding, but also offers numerous benefits. So it will help you track and refine progress towards standards. So most likely that will be your kind of RDSAP and EPCC targets. Again, knowing where you started from very much helps to know where you're going to go. You can quickly capitalize on opportunities. Again, if you know a property is below C and the type of works that it will require, you can do those at certain points. So for instance, when a property becomes void, and again, that's another point in terms of referring back to those kind of internal pressures, making sure that all teams are working together. Void's team will have their own KPIs, most likely in terms of void turnaround time, and you need to make sure that they're aware of the work that you're doing, and that you can match those up, make sure, say, a heat pump can go in when the property is void, saving on particular disturbance for a resident. Identify missing data for cost-effective surveying. Again, are there particular data sets that you are missing as part of say stock condition survey data, and that may be ventilation. You might not capture whether property's got trickle vents or extract ventilation, and you can start to collect that. That will help you identify and cost up works going forward. Inform contractor activities. Again, having better data up front helps you properly plan and inform the contractor. Contractors very much prefer to have data up front rather than having to scrabble around and change projects halfway through because the data wasn't correct and having to make big changes. And generate meaningful reports for stakeholders and board members. Again, going back to that point, having a good idea of your starting point will definitely help you then report back to your stakeholders and board members. And a mature data capability looks beyond data management and one-off data submission to DESNES. It can add significant business and monetary value. Yeah, so again, having that data up front will help the whole process of delivering a project. What data do I need? Whilst you could just use baseline data to assess your retrofit options, it can also be beneficial to have numerous other information pieces. So a list of properties that are in conservation areas, that should be available through your local authority. And again, a list of properties that are listed buildings. This will certainly help during the kind of project planning phase. It will take longer to get certain measures through those type of properties, and you can build that into your project. Other barriers, so are you aware of particular tenant refusals? That might be a reason why they are particularly, say, have particularly low EPC because they have not allowed works to happen in the past. Narrow cavities, are you aware of a property that was a narrow cavity previously? If it's in a row of terraces, it's highly likely that the rest of the properties in that row will also have narrow cavities, and you can assess that for as a hard to treat property, maybe it will require external wall insulation, which will be more expensive. But again, having that data up front will allow you to plan accordingly and budget accordingly. A list of planned works that are already in the pipeline. Again, as I discussed before, you may have a list of windows and doors, kitchen replacements, roofing replacements. If you're able to align those with the types of work you're looking to do, you'll be able to make significant cost savings, whether that be putting solar PV panels on at the same time as doing roofing. You can save on scaffolding, potentially certain tiling if it's inlaid solar PV system, or if you're doing internal wall insulation, at the point when you're doing a new bathroom or kitchen is the best time to do it, especially if it's most likely the rear of the property. Are there heat networks that you could connect into, and an idea of your organization's short and long-term energy goals. Again, how quickly do you need to get to EPCC and then on to net zero? Do you have a target of what net zero looks like for your organization? And again, supply chain prices will just help you understand the type of budgets, co-funding that you'll require in order to deliver the works that your energy data is telling you. So where do I find the data? Common examples, specifically for probably social housing on the first three, would be asset management system extracts, stock condition data. I mean, gas safety certificates have to be done every year, so it should be pretty accurate in terms of the type of boiler system you've got in that property. And then EPC, so I mean stock condition data, what's every 5 years-ish, gas safety certificates every year, and EPCs every 10 years. So again, looking at the kind of when those bits of data were collected will also be helpful in identifying the type of works that need doing. Less conventional examples, you may have done some solar PV modeling in the past that couldn't be put into an asset management system, so it's sat on a spreadsheet somewhere, but it could certainly be useful now in terms of understanding the properties that will be suitable for solar PV. There may be non-digital sources, maps, or reports that have been done in the past that sat on shelves that actually could be very useful. Google Maps, a great free resource in order to see the type of properties you'd be looking at. What's the street scene look like? Are you going to be running into issues with lean-tos? If you're doing external wall insulation, that can all be identified relatively easily on Google Maps. And knowledgeable colleagues leaning on your colleagues who've been in the area for a while, understand the areas you're working in, is very, very useful. So data can come in all shapes and sizes, and you've probably got more data than you realize. It's a case of gathering all that together. Overcome data quality issues. So old data isn't necessarily an issue. Some old data is fine. You know, the archetype and build date of a property isn't going to change, so that will be the same. There may be some things that do change, so whether it's had certain fabric works, has it had a new heating system, that kind of thing. Incorrect data, you should be able to recognize and remove these values. Some are easier to remove than others. For instance, you may notice that a archetype in a row of terraces, one says it's got solid wall and the rest have cavity, so that should can ever tell you whether there is some wrong data there. You may have a particularly low EPC, let's say it's a really low G, but it's actually had a new gas boiler fitted, in which case it's highly unlikely that's correct anymore. Conflict between data sources, you'll need to assess which source you are most confident in. So that might be the most recent, or you may have identified that a certain EPC assessor or stock condition surveyor's data isn't fantastic, in which case you may kind of mark that as a potential as a wrong data to be double checked. And missing data, so you'll either need to clone in data and mark it as low confidence, or conduct a survey for key data fields that cannot easily be cloned. So that would normally be things like heating systems and fabric improvements. Resident engagement, extremely important from the start to get your resident engagement right. It can be the difference between 50% access and 90% access. So making sure you've got that resident engagement plan in place. So you should have a retrofit plan, and then your resident access. So this is a potential kind of way you could plan it. So you have a retrofit plan, resident access to their homes, access given delivery, no access given, unable to deliver project. So how are you going to talk to the resident at each stage of this process to make sure that, if, for instance, there's no access given, why was that? Can we bring that around? Are we finding that we're getting lots of no access, in which case the first part in our step needs to be changed, whether that's the letter, whether it's a follow-on phone call, where are we going wrong, and how can we kind of continually improve that process? So you've got stakeholder mapping, should really understand the audience for retrofit. Who is your particular audience? Is it a particular estate? Is it a particular region? Particular type of resident or tenant? So understand your audience, understand who can support with this messaging. So I don't know, are you particularly focusing on an independent living scheme, in which case the communications may be slightly different from a general needs property. Develop an engagement and communications plan. Really need to think about who, what, when, why, and how. And it really should be clear and jargon-free communication. So using lots of acronyms will not help you. You need to make sure that it's clearly readable. So actually sending your communication through to someone who isn't part of the project to have a read through and where they understand it is usually a good idea. There's also lots of already kind of letter templates out there, whether from numerous sources, so it'd be useful to search those out. You don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. There's some really good templates out there. Example engagement and communications plan. So what is energy efficient assessments to start at Acacia Avenue? Who? So it's the asset manager is going to be doing that. The audience are, again, the residents of the avenue. How that you're initially going to contact them would be a letter. When? 3 weeks before, because that's how you always contact tenants for all normal plan work. So it's always good to kind of keep that in line with normal processes. Do you need any resources? So you want a letter, diagram of the process, logo of the contractor, image of the assessor. Who can help? So the comms manager is going to be pulling that together. And how do you know it's going to be successful? So access rates and number of refusals. Again, if that's not working, you'd be able to identify why, hopefully from follow-up phone calls. People didn't receive the letter, they didn't understand it, X, Y, and Z, and then you can make some changes. It might be you might be looking to engage in a kind of a larger resident group. So you identify where that group is, attend the meetings, quarterly meetings before the start of the project, identify certain people who may be able to be your best practice peer sharing group. Again, you might want to do a presentation or a slide deck, and that will be led by the neighborhood team, for instance. And again, identify access rates, number of refusals, and then you can continue to update that process. So it's not a fixed process. It will change as you learn and go through the project. Ways to engage residents, numerous different tools. Traditionally, normally use print, so that might be press releases, leaflets, letters, flyers, posters, questionnaires, and face-to-face, so community events, particularly if you are working in an estate, doing things such as air source heat pumps, where it's very valuable to show people what an air source heat pump looks like, how loud it sounds. People won't be up to speed with the systems, and being able to touch and feel and see that it isn't very loud and it doesn't take up that much room is very, very valuable. So that might also include demo homes, meet the contractor events, drop-ins, knocking on to people's houses. And then you've also got new media, so digital. You may wish to go out on TikTok, Instagram, certain your web pages, using influencers. VR headsets can also help if you want to show people what again, what an air source heat pump looks like. So there's certainly ways to use digital to your advantage as well. Internal versus external resident engagement. So the pros of internal resident engagement, so having that in-house, so you understand your audience better, you can respond to customers' needs better generally, and you can manage the quality of that customer experience because you've got it in-house. Obviously, the cons on top of that is you'd need to have increased staffing, so that's increased costs, management time, etc. There may well be a lack of technical understanding, or you may have to do some upskilling in order to get the right people internally, and you have to coordinate with contractors because you can't do it alone. Contractor-led resident engagement on the other half here. Pros are part of contractor costs, so you don't have to build that into your own internal budgets. You can coordinate. They can coordinate bookings, so it's one call. They'll be able to speak to the people in their office and make sure that link is very clear, and that communication, there isn't that gap in communication and a middleman. Systems and processes will already be set up for, particularly for larger principal contractors, in how they manage that kind of resident engagement, tenant liaison process. Cons, obviously, they won't know your audience as well. You'll have limited control over the customer experience. It's quite possible that you may get a higher turnover of those resident liaison people, which again can cause issues. And there's no ongoing support for residents once that contractor has left. You may be left with internal teams that don't understand the works, etc. So there's certainly pros and cons to both ways of working. Procurement and supply chain management. So what is procurement? The buying of goods and services that enable an organisation to operate in a profitable and ethical manner. That's the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. And in the public sector, there's a focus on value for money and the most economically advantageous, if I can say the word, tender. So the best mix of quality considerations and effectiveness for the least outlay over the period of use of the goods or services bought. So yeah, what's the most economically advantageous tender for you? Main types of procurement. So you may want to decide, or your procurement professional in your organization or your consultant may decide that you want to do an internal procurement process. So there's numerous ways of doing that. You can have open procedure, you have restricted procedure, or negotiated procedure. So there's numerous ways about going tendering for works. On the other hand, you may look to go on a slightly different route and use a framework which has already done some of that work for you. So there are numerous types of framework out there. Your again, procurement professionals may already have certain frameworks that they prefer to use, or you may use a particular framework that has the contractor that you prefer, or the type of measures already procured. So understanding how you're going to go through that procurement piece is certainly highly valuable. You should really be thinking about that from day dot, and ideally, if you can, be working with the supply chain and contractors you're looking to use, understanding that whether they would be interested in the type of work that you are looking to procure. And again, if you want to have a deeper dive into procurement, there are lots of resources on the RISE website. So planning your procurement. So you need to think about what you need. Are you just doing fabric works? Are you doing low carbon heating? Are you doing a mix of high risk work such as external wall insulation, internal wall insulation on historic buildings? That will change the type of supply you need. So what are your organizational procurement policies? Do you only set up your own frameworks? Do you prefer to go through already procured frameworks? Do you understand the challenges of procurement around the funding round? So obviously everyone will be going out to procurement at a similar time. That may cause pressures in the supply chain. And again, do you understand the time frames of the different procurement routes? Going out to procurement yourself or setting up, say, your own framework will take longer than utilizing an already set up framework. But there are pros and cons to each. Supply chain management. Contractors definitely prefer to have clear specifications. Do you understand what work you're asking them to do? For instance, do you have clear specifications for the type of air source heat pump, type of insulation? The clearer it can be, the better, obviously, as long as you understand the type of work you're trying to deliver. To have specific and realistic KPIs. For instance, we would like to have a post-EPC within a week of property completion and a trust mark within a month of property completion. And is someone going to be monitoring that? Obviously, if you set KPIs and you don't monitor them, they will not be met. Again, post-work KPIs that may be around tenant satisfaction, resident satisfaction, any requirement for snagging and cost. And then again, management processes. Who is managing this whole process from the specification through to the setting and management of your KPIs and post-work KPIs to make sure that you are delivering the type of project that you wanted and you procured in the first place. Challenges. Who else can impact your project? The answer is quite a lot of people, unfortunately. So if you are looking to do a lot of air source heat pumps or solar panels, it's likely that you will need to engage with your district network operator. You can see the little map there of who they are. So they are the licensed to distribute electricity in the UK, and these companies own and operate the systems of cables and towers that bring electricity to our homes. If you are going to be either drawing a lot more electricity or potentially exporting electricity to the grid, they are going to care about that. So you need to understand the requirements for power in homes and communities. So yeah, as it says, particularly that will affect solar PV. Generally not one-off installations, but if you start getting numerous solar PV installs in the same area, you may come across issues. They may say that you can only install a certain size of solar PV panel per property, or they may have to upgrade the a substation in order to take account of it. And again, heat pumps, is the size of the fuse suitable for a heat pump? Again, they would need to get a DNO out to upgrade that, or again, if you're fitting numerous heat pumps in an area that's going to draw significant extra electricity from the grid, particularly if you're on the social housing fund and claiming the on-gas low-carbon heating grant, that may well become something you need to consider. And you can engage with most of the district network operators early. So you may have a list of properties that you are looking to install. You can send that to them generally, and they can at least have foresight of applications and may then come back to you before you need to fit those properties, so you're not going to have delays with stoppages from the DNO. Utilities and telecoms, yeah, you'll need You may have a requirement to move gas meters, particularly if you're doing external wall insulation. You might have external electrical cables or phone cables that need moving. This will probably be an issue if you've got blocks of flats, particularly with phone cables. So it will likely be owned by an internet provider or Openreach, and you'll have to engage with them to move telecoms cables before you can, for instance, put in external wall insulation. That will create delays and extra cost for your project. So who are they and where are they? Statutory authorities, you'll have planning authorities. Will any of the work need planning permission? Are they, especially, are you looking at listed buildings? Are you looking at conservation areas? National parks, they all have their own requirements. And if you can understand who those people are and the type of work you're doing early enough, it should smooth out your delivery of your project. Assurance. So we need to look at risk management. How are we going to manage the risks of delivering a project? Unmanaged risks can derail a project. So risk register, you'd have had, if you're applying for local grant or warm homes, social housing fund, you will have had to do a risk register. It shouldn't be just a one-off document that you pull together for the sake of getting the funding and then something you forget about for 3 years. You want to make sure it's updated often, that it's relevant, that it captures the risks that you're facing at the time. And again, fraud risk assessment's the same. So prevention of fraud and errors, how are you going to do that? So really it needs to be a living, breathing document. It will help you if you come across risks, and it's captured in that risk register. You know who to go to. For instance, let's say you've got a property that needed DNO application, has come across as being requiring some work with the DNO, and you've also got the contact details for the DNO there who you can go to straight away. It makes things lots easier if you've got that already in a document. Project delivery and evaluation, ensuring timely completion. Quality control measures, who is checking the work on site, surveyors or clerk of work. So you get, again, going back to that point regarding that project surveyor, very, very important. Who is signing off the works, who's checking works during delivery to make sure that it's done to standard. Sure, many of you will be aware of the a number of contractors who had their trust mark certificates suspended, particularly focusing on external wall insulation. You may have been affected by that. If you have someone on site checking the works, even if it is a poor contractor, it's highly likely that those works are going to be delivered to a much better standard than if no one was checking it. Evaluation, what does a successful project look like? So yeah, how are you going to determine that your project has been a success? So is that the number of properties delivered? Is that SAT point increases or making sure all those properties get to EPCC? Are those carbon savings? If you've got particular kind of net zero targets, you may want to have set carbon savings. Fuel poverty, again, if that is your target, how are you going to measure that? How are you going to monitor that? Or that might be a kind of a lot of other different targets that you set that meet your internal requirements. So setting KPIs, have a think about what you want to get out of the project and then set sensible KPIs that you can monitor throughout the life cycle of the project, and how you're going to evaluate that. So if you need to capture fuel poverty data, then you may need to capture tenant kind of income data at the start and also fuel bills, or you're going to manage it by just the SAP data. So yeah, understanding the data you need to collect at the start will help you evaluate it at the end. It's very difficult to evaluate projects when you only think about the evaluation at the end of the project. Delivery forecasting, so estimating how long each stage will take. So from sign up through to assessments, product leading times, particularly again, if you're installing things like air source heat pumps, if you need 100, that may well cause issues in manufacturing. There will be leading times there. Install, again, whether considerations, are you looking at doing lots and lots of your external wall insulation during the winter period. Those will extend the time period for that delivery because you can't deliver when it's raining and particularly cold outside, etc., etc. So you need to understand what will impact your project. And again, handovers and the trust mark certification post EPCs, how long will that all of that take? And that will give you a better project plan at the end of it. And additional resources. So as I said before, there's numerous resources on the RISE website. We've got some upcoming events as well. So we've got Creating Social Value, a supply chain masterclass. So again, if you're interested in how you are going to add social value to your procurement, then the masterclass on the 19th of March would be a good one to look at. Identifying and verifying resident eligibility, so particularly for the Warm Homes local grant. Then again, if that's something that you need to build into your project plan, how are you going to verify that? 24th of March. Gaining assurance from your supply chain, again, RISE Masterclass on the 24th of March. How are you going to, again, that kind of procurement piece, if that's something you need to focus on, would be a good one to look at. And engaging private residents for retrofit, again, for specifically for Warm Homes local grant on the 28th of March. If that's something that you are concerned about or want some additional help with or understanding on, those would be some masterclasses to have a look at. And obviously there is a huge back catalogue as well. As I said, yeah, relevant RISE on-demand resources. So you have just lots and lots and lots of resources there. So if there is a topic that we've covered today that you would like more information on, it's highly likely that there will be a specific masterclass on that particular area. So that is the end of our masterclass. I would say thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think it was like a really insightful presentation, and I hope all the attendees think likewise, think the same.